The land of Albion is full of magic and mystery. While many view Albion as a fantastical land full of adventure, glorious potential, and beauty, others see the darker side full of power-hungry villains, darkness, and debauchery. As the land grew and thrived with time, unknown forces nudged the residents of this vast country into specific directions in order to fulfill their agenda for both good and evil. One of these forces cost Albion one of their most treasured hamlets. What was this force hidden away in the shadows? Here we explore in the lore behind the Shadow Court. While it is unknown how the Shadow Court came to be, it is known that it consists of 3 shadow judges, each of which possessing demonic glowing eyes. Sitting on thrones of what appear to be constructed from human bones, a robed female leader leads the Shadow Court with 2 robed males either side of her. As creatures of another dimension, only those with the knowledge to summon them are said to use their services, but at a dark cost. Although only rumoured to exist up until the Age of Enlightenment, one event brought attention to this mysterious group. On the southern coast of Albion, in the small farming village of Oakvale, a young man, full of fear of his potential demise that came with living in a turbulent time without the heroes that had once guarded Albion from evil. He became aware of the rumours surrounding a sinister force that could make him feel safer, and so with his mind set on a goal, he somehow acquired the ancient knowledge on how to summon the Shadow Court and used it to bring them from their dimension. As they appeared before him, he asked them for immunity from the disease of his natural morality and agreed to a deal with the Shadow Court to live forever. Unaware of the cost of his wish, the Shadow Court gave him what he wanted, and then they took their payment. The village of Oakvale filled with screams as the shadow judges brought in shadows into the small hamlet to collect payment. The shadows filled the streets and homes of those that the boy had once called neighbours. As the boy ran from the town as it fell, he looked back and described the scene as a circus of screams. The boy, now known as Reaver, never returned to the village of Oakvale. As a part of their deal, the Shadow Court presented him with a dark seal. With this seal, they instructed him that he would have to send them a sacrifice every so often in order to uphold his end of the bargain. Failing to do so would result in the Shadow Court coming for him, and he, like so many others, would be a victim to the shadows. Within the empty village, a structure was adapted and became a temple for the shadow judges. Some say shadow worshippers came to the decimated region after hearing about this event and chose to turn the region into a place to worship their gods. Known as a temple to some, others that had entered the region described it as a tomb well. Inside, many tombs were constructed and became the home of many of the dead of Albion. It is rumoured that those taken by the shadows during the Agreement of Oakvale are now trapped within the tombs. With a temple dedicated to them, the shadow judges now had a place to call their home in Albion. Here, those that had agreed to a deal with them could now uphold their end by visiting them. Over the years, the region of Darkwood took over the village and became known to those around Albion as Wraith Marsh. With such an evil event occurring in the region, Hollow Men gravitated to it and began to haunt it, making the area extremely dangerous. As a term of his agreement, Reaver agreed to send one unknowing sacrifice to the Shadow Court when requested. Standing before the Shadow Judges, they would accept this sacrifice based on the person having the Dark Seal in their possession. From this, their youth would be transferred over to Reaver, and after this, the seal would make its way back to him, ready to be used again when another sacrifice was required. Although unconfirmed, it is thought by scholars that any who had bargained a deal with the Shadow Court received a Dark Seal in order to continue their commitment to their arrangement. While the deal in Oakvale is known to be the only proven documented event that the Shadow Judges existed after historians discovered Reaver's diary explaining his first-hand experience, there have been other events in history that could be linked to the Shadow Court. After the collapse of the Old Kingdom and just before the Age of Heroes, a city stood strong in the northern wastes, known only now as Necropolis. The Snowspire Oracle once told a story of how the city thrived, but one villager was not satisfied by the life he led, and so he bargained the fate of the city in exchange for wealth and power with entities far too powerful to comprehend. The next day, he had his wealth, but before he could leave the city, a vast force swept through and brought in utter devastation so quickly that those within did not realize they had died, simply shadows of their former selves, continuously lost in a haze of confusion. Although the Shadow Judges were not named during this event long ago, the circumstances are said by many to appear extremely similar to the fate of Oakvale. Although only 2 incidents have been presumed to have been linked to the Shadow Judges, there may be many more residents of Albion summoning their services in return for wealth, mortality, and other rewards they desire. While the land of Albion is full of light and wonder, the sinister forces still make their way into the hearts of those desperate to acquire a better life, those that will give anything to achieve it. I ask Hero, if you heard the call of the Shadow Judges, would you give anything to have whatever you wanted, or would you simply attempt to acquire your heart's desires yourself without the devastating fee that the Shadow Judges demand? The theory. Theresa destroyed Oakvale. Here, I'll take a theory about the Fable universe and try to attempt to make sense of it using facts and lore from Albion. If you have any theories for future videos, let me know. Theresa destroyed Oakvale. This week, I thought I would take a deeper look at the destruction of Oakvale. Now, as you can probably tell by many of the videos on this channel, I believe that Theresa is probably the greatest evil of Albion, although her actions are masked in goodness as she believes she's doing what is best for Albion. In this theory, I'll attempt to explain how she destroyed Oakvale. Although indirectly, this theory will look at how she pulled some strings behind the scenes to cause its eventual destruction as one of the many dominoes needed to fall in order for our blind seer to acquire the spire. Beginning with point 1, we'll start with the basics and groundwork of the theory. Theresa is originally from the farming village of Oakvale. As a child, her village was attacked by bandits and she was brutally assaulted, even having her eyes torn out by Jack Blades. When we meet her in Fable 1, she's playing in the field where the Shadow Court would later be built. Now, even at a young age, Theresa showed prophetic abilities, and so the tomb well being built in this very spot just before the biggest event of her life could show a slight sign that this area is linked to her. This first point is a huge reach, but I thought I'd begin with the weakest point and move onwards onto the strong ones. This village, even hundreds of years later, would still hold strong feelings and memories for Theresa. The place where her whole life fell apart would be a place of strong negative emotions, and so, why wouldn't you, if you had the chance, want to see it fall if it meant something good could come from it? I will address the benefits of the fall of Oakvale in point 2. Now, with the groundwork sorted, let's move on to point 2. Theresa has the ability to look into the future with her prophetic abilities. While in Samarkand, she discovered information on the spire and the steps she would need to acquire it from Lucian after its completion. As we know, she nudged Lucian in the direction to build the spire. Would it be too much of a stretch to think that she nudged the other pieces of her giant game of chess so that they would be in place for when she needed Sparrow to collect them in order to kill Lucian? Reaver was one of these chess pieces. As the hero of skill, Reaver is needed to take part in the ritual to summon the music box so that Sparrow can finally take down Lucian. If you think about it, Reaver would have died approximately 200 years before the events of Fable 2 due to his morality if he hadn't used the Shadow Judges. As a man that feared death, I believe that Theresa saw his potential path using her abilities, and maybe she nudged him into the direction that would result in him summoning the Shadow Judges, completely aware that doing this action would doom Oakvale. How would Reaver have the knowledge on how to summon them? Theresa would have been studying the world for at least 300 years at this point, and so maybe she acquired this information and fed it to Reaver, in which he then used the knowledge to achieve immortality. While this would have destroyed the town she grew up in, it would allow her to keep alive one of her most important pieces in her game of chess up until the point that he was needed to play his role in the grand plan. While the village would have been taken over by the shadows and subsequently engulfed by the Darkwood Marsh, It would allow her to use the Spire to make a better Albion in the long run, the needs of the many over the needs of the few. While her plan essentially created more problems for Albion, she kind of had morally grey intentions. Therefore, in summary, pulling the strings to push the idea of summoning the Shadow Judges to Reaver essentially doomed the town, but allowed her to keep Reaver alive so that her grand plan could succeed 200 years in the future. On to point 3. How would Theresa know of the Shadow Judges? Well, as mentioned in the previous point, I believe she came across them in her research when studying in the Grand Libraries of Samarkand. Now, one thing we do notice about Theresa is that she is ageless. For the most part, I do believe her will energy sustains her life force, just like I believe it does with Scythe. But what if she also made a deal with the Shadow Court for immortality? As mentioned in Reaver's diary entry, we know they need to be summoned, and so, while in Samarkand, as she spent centuries researching, she could have come across them and made a deal. As the Shadow Court wouldn't have been built at that point, she wouldn't have had to go to a specific location, she'd simply summon the judges using her mysterious method. For a mere mortal, the price for this would have been a whole town. But Theresa is not a mere mortal, she is an extremely powerful being. She could offer something different to what a mere mortal could. Her ability to see into the future, or even nudge vulnerable people she could sense to be easy targets that are looking for a better life into the direction of summoning the Shadow Judges. This deal would essentially send the judges a constant stream of new customers. In my opinion, a great bargaining tool for her immortality. Even between Fable 3 and the Journey, her age decreases dramatically. The judges have the ability to manipulate the aging process, so why not hers if she asks for it? Now, this could simply be down to a design choice on Lionhead's part, but within the game there has to be a reason for this. So, let's say she renegotiated her deal with the Shadow Judges. Now, what does this have to do with Oakvale falling? It suggests a link between Theresa and the Shadow Court. She is aware of them and Reaver's deal, as she briefly mentions it as the hero of Bower Lake enters Wraith Marsh. She knows what happened there. This could be her all-seeing eye powers at work, or she was secretly responsible. Also, if we look at Cornelius Grimm, the leader of the Temple of Shadows, he worships the ancient shadows of Albion, and I believe they are linked to the Shadow Court. They're the same species, I guess. Anyway, if you look at his eyes, they are pure white. While Theresa's eyes were cut out in her youth, we can see in Fable 2 that they look extremely similar to Cornelius's, and so, maybe a level of worship or bargaining could allow those deemed worthy enough by the shadows to acquire this eye effect. Closing thoughts. Now, I bet some of you are there in the comments thinking, is he going to address that the female judge looks just like a shadow version of Theresa? And yes, I am. There was a wide theory that she was the leader of the court, but Lionbun 1, a developer of the game, simply said they reused assets during development. While it would have been cool if she was somehow a member or connected to the Shadow Judges, this simply isn't the case. Just reused assets. This is not one of my stronger theories, I'll admit that, but just imagine if she was responsible for destroying her childhood home, the place where she saw her father die, her mother get dragged away, and had her eyes cut out by Jack of Blades. This place would not hold fond memories for her. So maybe it would just be best if it fell in her metaphorical eyes. What do you think of this theory? Did Theresa potentially doom her home village by nudging Reaver so that in the long run she would acquire the power of the Spire? Or is this theory too far out there? Let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. By now, there's a huge backlog of Fable videos on the channel for you to look through, and I am also posting updates on the development of the new Fable game when we get new information. Also, please like the video as it really does help a lot, and hit that notification bell. Now hero, thank you for watching, enjoy your day, bye.